Welcome to the Brain Factor Podcast with Joy and Laura, powered by Meridian Healthcare, approaching wellness with heart, one life at a time, one community at a time. This is a science-based conversation about real life. Our goal? To leave you with a few nuggets of wisdom, smile on your face, and maybe even a laugh or two. So let's jump in. Hi, welcome to the Brain Factor. I'm joined here with my co-host Laura. We're excited to see you here joining us again today. And we wanted to talk a little bit about all or nothing thinking today. So I was thinking about it, and I was thinking about non-negotiables and goal setting and guidelines and how all those things play in together and can be comforting to us or not comforting to us.
And I think that's how we ended up at the table with this topic, right? Because Joy was really thinking about this a lot, and you were talking about it in terms of it being maybe a limiting thing, and then you were switching and talking about it being like an anchoring thing, and I was like, well, is it good or is it bad?
Yeah, well, that's a great point.
Ooh, I don't know. Right? Let's explore it.
We are going to explore that today. Yeah. Because some people feel like, okay, so let's just talk about a non-negotiable.
Yeah. Like, what are we talking about?
Yeah. So let's go there. So all or nothing thinking is kind of like, oh, I didn't get this part right, so I'm a failure.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Like everything has to be a certain way or executed in a certain way or a certain order or done every day or every week or whatever.
Yeah.
It's like frequency, tasks, whatever it is.
Yeah.
Or, it's all garbage. It's not going to work, or it's not worth anything, or it's not. And like we kind of keep going back to these examples because, Joy and I have each been on our own sort of health journeys, but it's sort of like the idea of fitness and nutrition, right? When we get on these kicks of I'm doing things a certain way, and then we have an off day, right? Like, what does that mean? How rigid are we being with those expectations we put on ourselves?
Yeah, and that's kind of what brought it up for me, because I've been on a fitness and wellness journey my entire life. So let's just get that out of the way. So
that's fair.
I talk about it a lot, but it's been going on forever. So, and fitness is a coping mechanism for me too. It makes me feel good, and it's great for me. So I think I didn't do my workout on a particular day, and this was just like this past week. And I thought, I just messed up my whole wellness plan that I built. And then I thought, well, wow, that's all or nothing thinking, because I really didn't, because there are a lot of different aspects to my plan. And although I didn't do my workout that morning, I think I did it later that day, which, made me a big failure. But I had realized that it was all or nothing thinking. And I thought about the fact that, well, I already watched a video on wellness today, or some, these little snippets that I watched. So I did that. I had already started to log my food for the day. I did all these other things, but because I didn't do that workout that morning, I'm like, oh, failure. Then I realized that's when I started thinking about guidelines and how guidelines can help us with those non-negotiables or the goal setting.
Yeah, and the difference between what is a guideline, right? Which to me, like the visual, I'm seeing like guardrails, right?
Right.
There's a space, there's some freedom.
Like when you go bowling and they put those bumpers down
we're not going to go
lines
past here,
right?
But there's some movement in between those guardrails that I think can be important. But I think, to me, it's such an interesting topic because the guardrails are so important. Yeah. Sometimes the rigidity is important, right? Like on the one hand, like structure reduces anxiety. It brings us comfort. Routines are very helpful for our mental health. They're very helpful for our consistency in getting results, whether that's like something with work, something relationally, something health and wellness, right? Consistency breeds results. And we know these things, but these things are the things that are drilled into our heads over and over and over again. Yeah. And then I think when we just go too far with it, sometimes it then becomes toxic, because all those things we know, we also know that like cognitive behavioral therapy identifies sort of that rigid thinking as a distortion, right? That can actually increase our anxiety and depression. Like there's also science and evidence and psychology out there that really supports that this can turn toxic really quick.
Yeah.
So I think it's tough. I had a friend challenge me on this recently. I thought it was really interesting because I've met with a lot of success on my health and wellness journey. About a year. It's been about a solid year. And I was talking about my morning routine, and I get up and I do this and I do that and I do this. And one of the things is I started getting on the scale in the mornings. And that's not something I ever did in my life because and I still believe that's just a number, right? It's like there are non-scale victories that I think are more important. But for me, getting very real about my health included looking at all the measurements, right? And that was one I was always afraid to look at. And so I've started looking at it, which is great. And that's been a really positive journey for me. But as I'm going through this whole thing, my friend looks at me and he says, "What happens if we don't get on the scale one day? What does that feel like?" And I was like, what? Why would I not do that? Yeah. And it really, really stopped me in my tracks. And I was and I found myself wanting to be defensive. Like, well, I don't have to do it every, well, he didn't say that. He challenged that part of my brain that wanted to be defensive because I did feel like I had to do it every day.
Right. All or nothing.
So, all or nothing. Yeah. Very rigid. And that really got me thinking about a lot of this kind of stuff because it's like what, even if it's yielding good results initially, what is becoming sort of a maladaptive coping strategy for us? And where is that line? I think that's the $1 million question.
Yeah. Oh, wow. That was deep.
Thanks, Joy.
It really was. It made me think a lot. That's kind of why I'm a little quiet right now because I'm processing all of what you did say there, but I can relate to all of that. I mean, there's been different times in my life where I've been that rigid. Kind of right now, I'm trying to be not as rigid. I'm trying to do this whole, here are your guidelines, just kind of, stay in the correct lane, but not be, I have to do this, I have to do this, I have to do this. So stepping on the scale every day. I've gone through things of that phase in my life too. Sometimes I do, sometimes I don't. But right now it's like, you know what? I'm feeling a little bloated today. I'm not going to get on the scale because I know it's going to be up. I know it's going to be up. I didn't drink any water yesterday. So my rings are tight. I know I'm retaining water.
Well, I think you said something really important just now when you said, I've been in that phase. Yeah. And right now I'm in this phase, right? Yeah. And going back to because we put a pin in this in the last episode,
we did. That's
so going back to sort of where this was born from, right? Yeah. This idea of self-awareness and self-regulation and knowing yourself and building that relationship, right? Rigidity and non-negotiable thinking might have its time and place, but if you're not tapped in to what you're using it for and how is it benefiting you, like how is this serving me or not serving me, and you're not having those conversations with yourself, then it's just kind of a free-for-all, right? It's just and so maybe it's working, maybe it's not, who knows, maybe it's toxic, right? And so I think these are just conversations worth having with ourselves, and I think they're really, really valuable because there is so much benefit to structure and consistency and commitment and all of those things that are, but again, those are the universally accepted positives, and we don't often look at the shadow sides of those and where that could possibly go wrong for us. So what does it look like when it does go wrong, right? What are some signs that maybe we have to evaluate the appropriateness of our rigidity?
I guess if it is stressing me out.
Yeah.
If I'm being so rigid on something, I'm not giving myself any grace. I'm not being kind to myself. I'm thinking, wow, I'm a huge failure.
Yes. For me, I think it's guilt.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Well,
if there's overwhelming feelings of guilt because I did or didn't do something one time, I think that's sort of a red flag for me to be like, maybe that's not great. Yeah. Like maybe you need to reevaluate how you're applying that, I heard something super great once, and I don't remember where I heard it. I know I talked to my daughter about it. It came up, but we had heard it somewhere, and we had a really nice conversation about it, that when you're trying to build a habit or a practice and you get to a certain point and then maybe you don't do it one day, or you didn't meet your own expectations once, twice, right? Occasionally. Are you still a person who does that? How do you define yourself, right?
Yes.
So like right now, again, like going back to the fitness thing, like, I mean, I'm not like, I don't go to the gym. I would rather do anything else. Okay. But anything.
I enjoy it.
I'll anything else. But I do walk, and I got into that.
And that I hate.
Year. So, and I love it. I'm out in my neighborhood, I'm walking, right? And I walk 6 miles a day. Now, there are some days I don't get my steps in, but I am still a person who walks 6 miles a day, and I still feel comfortable saying that.
Yeah.
And I think that's important, right? If I missed a day or 2 days, and I suddenly don't define myself as somebody who does that, well, no, I don't, because I didn't go yesterday. Right? Like if you weren't feeling well or you were on a trip and you didn't go to the
completely.
gym.
I'll
You're
usually
still a person who works out.
Yeah, I will usually think about it in terms of when we're talking about working out anyway. And if I miss X amount of things, then I need to reevaluate what's going on.
Right.
Not if I miss 1 or 2. Like you said, you missed 2 days this week.
But
you said because it's, we're in Florida and it was 18 degrees this morning.
Right.
So, I get that. And that is a reason.
That might confuse people. We do sometimes record these ahead of time. So it might
not
be 18
that is.
degrees.
It won't be 18
They might be like, what are they
degrees.
talking about? It's 73 degrees outside.
Yeah, it's March.
But currently, at the time of this recording,
yes, as we're sitting here,
it's cold.
Yes, we've had a couple weeks of very cold weather recently.
Yeah.
But that's also a valid reason for not doing it. You're just a girl living in Florida, and it's too cold to go outside, right? Yeah, there's not enough degrees. She said that earlier too. This is not enough degrees for me.
It's not enough. Too few.
Yeah.
Too few. But yeah, so that's I think identity. Is our identity too tied to completing these tasks or doing these things, right? And I think if we look at it too, like, let's get away from the fitness example for a minute. Let's talk about it in terms of like maybe our like character, right? Who do we want to be, right? If we're somebody who practices kindness or forgiveness or gratitude, right? Yeah. And that's how we define ourselves, and we do it with intention, and it's something we've worked hard at, right? And then we do something, say something one day, or we do something that is unkind, or that is not humble or not grateful, right? In a moment in time, we might be disappointed with that behavior, but would we still describe ourselves as somebody who is kind or leads with gratitude, right? If one transgression makes us say, well, I'm not a kind person now. Right. That's we've applied entirely too much rigidity, and going back to what we were talking about last episode, that's that lack of grace and mercy extending to ourselves. Right. So to me, that would be a little bit of a red flag that maybe the rigidity was a little too toxic.
Could be. And if you think about it too, going back to the last episode that you're referencing about, your relationship with yourself. Yeah. What would you say to me if I did something that wasn't within the scope of my character?
Right. I would literally be like, Joy, this is a one-time little tiny thing.
Yes,
and
but Laura, could you believe this is what I said to someone?
Of the time, like, you're a human being. You're gonna have a moment or so.
Yeah.
I might even just be like, well, they had it coming.
That's fair.
That's a separate conversation. But yes, you're right. Like, that talking to ourselves and really extending that grace and mercy, like we talked about last time, I think is all tied into this. But I will offer this because, we started by saying, like, sometimes it's good, sometimes it's bad. And then we've talked about how it can be bad, right?
Right.
But I will say, for me, if the expectations that I put on myself are a proactive approach to my mental health, if there are things that I know I need to do to keep myself mentally and emotionally healthy, I don't allow any wiggle room for those. I am as rigid as possible with those. And,
Yeah.
and there's one really important reason for me. Again, this might not be the answer for everybody else. Nobody can answer these questions but you. But for me, if it's something with my physical health or my character or my work habits or any of that, I have the mental clarity to
Right.
assess,
Right.
to ask the questions that we're talking about today, to say, gee, how did this serve me? How did it not? When it has to do with my mental health, I'm not going to have, if it goes south, I'm not going to have the same mental clarity, right? My mental, emotional, or behavioral health. Like I'm not going to have the same clarity to assess that. And so the proactive things I put in place to make sure I don't get there I put a lot of rigidity on those. Those are non-negotiables for me.
Would that be something like, okay, so yeah, granted, if it is your mental health, you don't have the clarity to maybe see something. So could a rigid non-negotiable be in that instance that, like, I see my therapist I don't cancel therapy
I don't. I
appointments,
prioritize it.
period.
Done. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
One of them for me is getting outside. And I don't go more than, and I work remotely a lot of the time, so this might sound like that's it to a lot of people, but I don't go more than one day without going outside.
Right.
Because there are some times where there's a day I don't go outside.
Yeah, and then you
If
get
it's
inside
pouring
and you
down rain,
start ruminating.
or
and
but it's like if it's not a weather related thing, I go outside. Now, right now, I go outside and I walk 6 miles. Right. So the rigidity is not placed on the walking; it's placed on the being outside. So that's a really important thing.
That
for
is
me.
very important.
And so but if it's weather related or I'm not feeling well or whatever, like it's okay if I have a day, right? But it's no more than one day.
Yeah.
And that's a mental health thing for me.
Yeah.
That's
Well,
air and sunlight.
It seems like that's not an unreasonable one either, because if you're just saying, I go outside, that's not a high bar.
Right.
It's just because
That's
I'm
a
assuming
really good
you mean
point.
just stepping outside
Literally.
for 5 minutes, walking to the mailbox, or
sitting on the porch.
Right.
In a bare minimum. In a bare minimum, that's what it looks like for sure.
Yeah.
And so maybe that's a really good point that you're bringing up, is that if there are cases where we feel that rigidity is really valid, like we need that, maybe look at what it is. You know, like how high is that bar?
Right.
Is it this incredibly time-consuming, strenuous, difficult to master? Like what's the level of what you're expecting to be rigid about?
Yeah.
Versus like
walking 6
outside.
miles is a bigger lift
That
than
is a bigger
stepping
lift
out the
than
front
just
door.
being outside.
Yeah.
And how I got there, this might be valuable too, is really looking at like trying to back off of my rigidity of the walking 6 miles, right? So when I asked the hard question, how is this serving me? It was serving me in multiple ways. And that was the one way in which I wasn't willing to let go of any of the rigidity, right? And also walking 6 miles gets me outside every day in the fresh air.
Right.
I'm not willing to give that part up. So what does the rigidity in relationship to that piece look like?
Right.
So that's something you could evaluate as well. If your non-negotiables are a heavy lift, really break down all the ways in which it's serving you in a positive way.
Yeah, and
then
in
hone
your
in on
instance, there was a piece of it
that I could be rigid
that
about.
can you be rigid about. Yeah.
So I think that's valuable as well.
Yeah, definitely.
The other thing I want to make sure to point out too, in terms of like, because we really went down a rabbit hole, but talking about like how can we tell if things are too rigid, and like the guilt and the bad feelings and the identity and all of that. One of the things is that I recently read, it was an article, I don't think it was a study, but it was an article, and she said something so poignant to me, as she said, we have to remember that our mind and our body respond to what we do most often, not all the time. And we tend to have the ability to either absorb or dismiss the infrequent occurrences. The same way, if you very infrequently went to the gym, you wouldn't see any results.
Right.
So why do you think if you infrequently miss it, you would see negative results,
that's
right?
That's a nice way to turn it on its head.
Right. Like the things we do infrequently have less of an impact of the things we do most often. And so if you are most often going to the gym, most often eating healthy, most often being kind, most often making your deadlines at work, then that is what your mind and body are going to respond to. That's what's going to yield the results, not the 1 or 2 or 3 times that you did something different.
Yeah.
Because nothing gets accomplished when we only do things every now and then. right?
Yeah.
So not even the negative stuff, and we forget that part.
Yeah. Like if you hardly ever clean your house.
Right. You said, I don't know who does that.
Yes. No, my house has to be clean. Just, yeah.
But that's actually a great example, though.
Yeah, but it's very relatable. Yeah.
Because if you like most of the time really clean your house, right? And you know you didn't do it this week, right? So somebody comes over and you'll be like, oh my gosh, my house is a total disaster. And they walk in like, are you serious?
Yeah, right.
Because your house is so clean that it could absorb that one day you skipped,
that few days where
where you just wiped out
vacuum.
the counters and you didn't run the vacuum,
yeah.
right? Like it's not like it was accumulating over time, and so
so you can apply that same thing to your kindness or
Absolutely.
your character or
what is accumulating over time. Absolutely.
Yeah. Huh.
So I think that's important. So I think the takeaways are. Like audit, if you will, like a self audit of those things that you are really holding yourself accountable to, right? How are they serving you? How are they not serving you, right? Where, and then the challenge I want to throw out there is, what is a non-negotiable, a hard and fast rule that you have right now that could maybe stand to be more flexible? Try to identify one, right?
Yeah.
And then in that audit, I think we really have to be looking at how not meeting those self-expectations, what sort of impact is that having on our emotions? You know, are there feelings of guilt and shame? That's the red flag, right? Or are we able to absorb that? And is, you know, and one of my favorite phrases is the juice worth the squeeze, right? So we got to kind of look at that as we're making these decisions. So take a look, take an inventory of your own non-negotiables, celebrate the ones that are serving you, put your energy there, be flexible where you can, and continue to build that relationship with yourself. So thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks for listening to The Brain Factor. Joy and I are so thrilled to be having these needed conversations. We'd love to hear your feedback on this episode, so if you could drop a comment or leave a review with your thoughts or any requests that you may have, it would be appreciated. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share with your friends. Living a healthier and happier life starts with one step, and we're excited to be on this journey with you. Until next time.